The mountain man paid to save a rejected bride. Then her hidden face changed his heart forever. The first time Wade Mercer heard the crowd laughing, he thought some poor drunk had fallen in the mud outside the Pine Hollow Mercantile. Then he saw the woman standing on the wagon bed, with a flour sack tied over her head. For one cold second, the whole town seemed to stop breathing around him. Pine Hollow sat low in a Colorado mountain valley, where the pines leaned close to the roofs and the wind always smelled of smoke, horse sweat, and coming snow. Wade had ridden down from Timberline Ridge for coffee, salt, nails, and a sack of flour. Nothing more. He had planned to be in town less than an hour, speak to no one unless he had to, and ride back before sundown. That was how he lived now. Alone, quiet, and hard to find. Folks said Wade Mercer had once been a good man to know. A man who laughed easy, helped neighbors mend roofs, and danced at church suppers with his young wife until the lamps burned low. But that was before fever took Ann 5 winters ago. Since then, Wade had become part of the mountain itself, silent as stone. Broad-shouldered, weather-beaten, with dark hair threaded in gray, and a beard that made his face look older than 42. He came to town only when his cabin shelves ran thin. That afternoon, his bay horse slowed before Wade pulled the reins. The animal's ears flicked toward the noise near the square. "Keep moving," Wade muttered. But his own eyes had already gone there. A rough wagon had been pulled beside the hitching rail. 2 barrels and a plank made a platform beside it. Standing on that plank was a thin, sharp-dressed man in a black coat, smiling like a fox outside a henhouse. Wade knew him by sight. Darius Pike, a trader of livestock, debts, and any misery that could turn him a profit. Beside Pike stood the woman. Her hands were tied in front of her. Her dress was plain gray, torn at one sleeve and muddy at the hem. The sack over her head was pulled low to her shoulders, tied loose around her neck with twine. She did not cry. She did not beg. She stood straight even as men stared and whispered. That straightness caught Wade harder than any scream could have. "Gentlemen," Darius Pike called, lifting both hands as if he were selling a fine mare. "I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Pike, why cover her face if she's worth anything at all?" Some men laughed, others looked away. A woman near the bakery crossed herself and hurried inside. Pike grinned wider. "Because I am an honest man. I won't sell beauty where beauty ain't promised. What I can promise is strong hands, a willing back once she learns sense, and a woman who can cook, sew, scrub, and keep a lonely cabin from falling into ruin." The woman's bound hands tightened. Wade saw it. A small movement, a quiet fire. "Who sent her?" someone called from the crowd. Pike's smile twitched. "Blackthorn Ranch gave up on her. That ought to tell you enough." At the name, murmurs moved through the square. Blackthorn Ranch belonged to Silas Crow, a rich cattleman with a big house south of the valley and more influence than any decent man should have. Wade had never liked him. He had never trusted men who smiled too softly and carried too many papers. "She was meant to be a bride," Pike continued, "but the arrangement soured before it reached the altar. Too stubborn, too strange, too much trouble for a proper household." The woman lifted her head beneath the sack, as if looking straight at him through the coarse cloth. Wade felt something old and painful move in his chest. A memory came to him, quick as a match flare. Ann standing on their porch years ago, wind pulling at her yellow shawl, saying, "A person's worth ain't decided by the loudest man in the room, Wade." He swallowed and looked away. He had not come here for trouble. "Show her face," a miner shouted. Pike raised one finger. "No, that is part of the agreement. Whoever takes her as she stands." "As bad as that," another man said, and laughter broke again. This time the woman flinched. "Not much, just enough." Wade's jaw tightened. He had seen cruelty in the mountains, winters that froze cattle where they stood, wolves circling weak calves, men stealing from dying partners at mining camps, but this was different. This was cruelty dressed up for public amusement. "How much?" someone asked. Pike looked pleased. $20. The crowd laughed harder. "For a sack-headed bride," a young man near the hitching post called. "I'll give 2. 3 if she can chop wood," another said. The woman's shoulders stiffened. Wade's fingers curled around the reins. He told himself to ride on. He had no wife to bring home, no wish for one. His cabin had one bed, one chair near the fire, one cup he favored in the morning. His life had been shaped around absence for so long that another heartbeat under his roof felt impossible. But the laughter kept rising, and the woman kept standing. Darius Pike's smile began to thin. "Come now, surely one of you needs help. She has papers, all proper, transfer of obligation, labor bond, marriage release, everything signed." "Signed by her?" the blacksmith asked from the edge of the crowd. Wade looked over. Amos Reed, the town blacksmith, stood with soot still on his sleeves and anger in his eyes. Pike waved the paper. "Signed by those responsible for her." "That ain't the same thing," Amos said. "No one asked you for a sermon." "No," Amos replied, "but somebody ought to speak one." The crowd grew uneasy. Men who had laughed now shifted their boots in the dirt. No one wanted to be the first to defend her. No one wanted to be the first to buy her either. Pike noticed it and snapped his fingers toward the woman. "Walk a step. Let them see you ain't lame." She did not move. His face darkened. "I said walk." Still she stood. A silence spread. Pike leaned close to her covered head and hissed something Wade could not hear. Whatever it was, the woman slowly stepped down from the plank to the wagon bed. Her skirt caught on a splinter. She stumbled but did not fall. The crowd laughed again, weaker this time. Wade heard enough. $10. His own voice surprised him. Every face turned. Even Pike froze for a moment. Wade sat tall in the saddle at the edge of the square, his buckskin coat dusty from the trail, his rifle tucked in its scabbard, his hat pulled low. He had no wish to be looked at. He hated how the town's attention settled on him like dust. Pike recovered quickly. "Wade Mercer. Well now, I did not expect Timberline Ridge to come shopping for a bride." "She ain't a bride," Wade said. Pike laughed. "Call her what you like once the money changes hands." Wade dismounted. His boots hit the dirt with a hard sound. The woman turned her covered head toward him. He walked through the crowd. Men parted without being asked. Some knew him. Some only knew the stories. The mountain man who lived alone above the snowline. The widower who once carried a fever-struck child 12 miles to a doctor through a blizzard. The man who did not start fights but never stepped back from one once it found him. Wade stopped in front of Pike. "The papers," he said. Pike held them back. "Money first." Wade pulled a folded $10 note from inside his coat. It was meant for winter supplies. He had no more than $4 left after it. But the sight of that woman standing bound in the town square made flour and coffee feel like small concerns. Pike snatched the money and pushed the paper toward him. "Done," Pike called. "Sold to Wade Mercer of Timberline Ridge." The word sold struck Wade like a slap. He looked at the woman. "Ma'am," he said, careful and low, "I'm going to untie your hands. Is that all right?" The sack shifted with her breathing. Then she nodded once. He took out his knife. Several men leaned in as if expecting some show. Wade turned his shoulder, blocking their view as he cut the rope from her wrists. The skin beneath was rubbed raw. She pulled her hands close to her stomach, not weakly, but like a person guarding the last thing that still belonged to her. Pike stepped closer. "A word of advice, Mercer. Leave the sack on until you're far from town. Some faces are better met in private." Wade looked at him. "Another word from you and you'll be swallowing it." Pike's smile died. Wade turned back to the woman. "Can you ride?" She hesitated, then gave another nod. He led his horse forward and offered his hand. She looked at it but did not take it right away. Instead, she lifted her chin beneath the sack and climbed with awkward dignity, using the stirrup and saddle horn. Only when she swayed did Wade steady her elbow. The crowd watched silently now. Wade mounted behind her, keeping as much space as the saddle allowed. She sat rigid, her back straight, her hands clasped before her. As they started out of Pine Hollow, Pike called after them, "No returns, Mercer." Blackthorn Ranch washed its hands of her. Wade did not turn. The woman did. Just slightly. Then she faced forward again. They rode north, away from the square, past the church with its white paint peeling, past the livery where a boy stared with wide eyes, past the last cabins where smoke curled from chimneys into the late autumn sky. The road narrowed into a trail, and the town dropped behind them. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The mountains rose ahead, blue and purple beneath gathering clouds. Aspen leaves trembled gold along the creek. Wade could feel the woman's fear in the way she held herself, but she made no sound, not even when the wind cut colder and the horse climbed higher. Only when Pine Hollow was far below did she speak. Her voice came muffled through the sack. "Why did you do it?" Wade looked at the trail ahead. He could have answered with many things. Because the laughter turned my stomach. Because my dead wife would have expected better of me. Because no person should stand bound while others decide their worth. Instead he said, "Because it was wrong." The woman was quiet. Then she said, "You do not know what is under this sack." "No," Wade replied, "I don't." "You may wish you had left me there." Wade's hands tightened on the reins, not in anger at her, but at every person who had taught her to say such a thing. "I paid to get you out of that square," he said, "not to own you." She turned her head a little, as if trying to hear whether he was lying. "When we reach my cabin," he continued, "you can eat, warm yourself, and rest. Tomorrow, if you want to leave, I'll take you wherever you choose." A bitter little breath came from beneath the sack, not quite a laugh. "I have nowhere to choose." The words were soft, but they stayed with him. Clouds thickened over the ridge. Somewhere far above, thunder rolled behind the peaks. Wade knew that sound, snow before midnight. The trail bent through tall pines, where the air smelled of sap and damp earth. His cabin was still 2 hours away. He should have been thinking about the storm, about the missing supplies he had not bought, about how foolish it was to bring a stranger into a lonely mountain home. Instead, he found himself looking down at her raw wrists. A thin blue thread was tied around one of them, half hidden beneath the rope marks. Not jewelry, not decoration, just a little scrap of ribbon, faded and worn, as if someone had tied it there long ago and she had refused to let it go. Wade almost asked about it. He did not. Some questions had to wait until a person felt safe enough to answer. The first snowflake touched his glove as they climbed the final ridge. The woman lifted her covered face toward the sky. For the first time since he had seen her, her shoulders eased. The wilderness frightened most people. To her, it seemed kinder than town. Wade looked ahead where the trail vanished into dark pine and early snow. By morning, Pine Hollow would be talking. Sela's crow would hear her name. Darius Pike would count his money, and whatever past had put that woman under a sack would begin riding after them. But for now there was only the mountain, the falling snow, and the strange quiet between two wounded souls. Then the woman spoke again. "My name is Nora." Wade let the name settle in the cold air. "Nora," he repeated gently, "I'm Wade Mercer." "I know," she said. "They said you were a hard man." He looked toward the white sky, where the first flakes were becoming many. They were right. A pause. Then she asked, "Are you cruel?" The question struck deeper than he expected. Wade thought of the empty chair by his hearth, the folded quilt Anne had sewn, the silence he had worn like armor for 5 winters. "No," he said at last, "just tired." Nora bowed her covered head. "So am I." They rode on as snow thickened around them. And high above Pine Hollow, in a lonely cabin waiting under the pines, a fireless hearth, one narrow bed, and a locked drawer full of old memories were about to receive a woman whose hidden face was only the beginning of the truth. Because before the night was over, Wade Mercer would remove the sack. And what he saw beneath it would not frighten him nearly as much as the pain she had been forced to carry in silence. By the time Wade Mercer's cabin appeared through the pines, the snow had begun falling thick enough to soften every sharp edge of the mountain. Nora saw only pieces of the world through the loose weave of the flour sack, a pale blur of snow, a dark wall of trees, the slow swing of a lantern hanging beside a cabin door. She had spent the ride trying not to lean against the man behind her, trying not to feel the steady warmth of him when the cold worked through her dress and into her bones. Wade had not asked her 100 questions. That alone made him different. Most men wanted a story before they offered mercy. They wanted tears, proof, excuses, or some confession they could hold over a woman's head. Wade Mercer had only bought her freedom from the square, cut the rope from her wrists, and given her silence as if it were a blanket. The horse stopped. "We're here," Wade said. His voice was low, rough from disuse, but not unkind. Nora's fingers tightened around the saddle horn. She heard him dismount, then felt his hand hover near her elbow without grabbing her. "I'll help if you want," he said. "If you want." Those 3 words nearly broke her. No one had asked what she wanted in a very long time. She nodded once. Wade took her carefully by the waist, steadying her as she climbed down. Her boots touched snow-covered ground, and for a moment her knees shook from the long ride. He noticed but said nothing. He only kept his hand near enough to catch her if she fell, far enough away to let her stand by herself. The cabin door groaned open. Warmth did not come out. The place had been empty all day. Still, it smelled of dry wood, iron, old coffee, and pine smoke buried in the stones of the hearth. To Nora, it smelled like shelter. Wade guided her inside. The room was small but orderly. A narrow bed stood against the far wall with a faded quilt folded at its foot. A rough table sat near the hearth with one chair pulled close and another pushed back as if it had not been used in years. Shelves lined the wall, holding jars, tin plates, a small stack of books, and a blue cup with a chipped handle. There was a rifle above the fireplace. There was also a woman's shawl, folded neatly on a peg beside the door. Nora turned her covered head toward it. Wade saw the movement. His face closed for a moment, like a door shutting against weather. "My wife S," he said quietly. "She passed years ago." "I'm sorry," Nora said. The words came out thin through the sack, but they were honest. Wade nodded once, then moved to the hearth. "Sit if you can. I'll get the fire going." Nora found the chair by touch and lowered herself into it. Her hands rested in her lap. The raw skin beneath her wrists burned now that the cold had reached it. She wanted to rub the marks, but pride kept her still. Wade knelt by the hearth, building a fire with quick, practiced hands. The scrape of flint sounded loud in the quiet cabin. Soon a small flame caught, then another. Orange light crawled over the logs, touched Wade's bearded face, and filled the room with a glow that made shadows tremble along the walls. A horse shifted outside beneath the lean-to. Wind pushed snow against the shutters. Nora sat very straight, waiting for the moment when kindness would ask its price. Instead, Wade filled a tin cup from a bucket and set it near her hand. Water, he said. She reached for it, then stopped. The sack. Her throat tightened. She had forgotten it for half a breath. Forgotten the thing that made her less than a person in Pine Hollow's eyes. Forgotten that she was still hidden like something shameful. Wade stood across from her, not moving closer. I can take it off, he said, only if you're willing. Nora's heart struck hard against her ribs. She had known this moment would come. On the ride up, she had imagined his face changing, curiosity turning to shock, shock turning to pity, pity turning to regret. She had seen that path on many faces before. Even good people could not always hide their first thought. Darius Pike told you to wait, she said. I don't take orders from Darius Pike. He told you there was a reason. I figured there was. You may not like it. Wade looked at her for a long moment. Ma'am, I don't need to like your face to treat you decent. The bluntness of it startled her. Then strangely it steadied her. Nora bowed her head. Her hands curled once in her lap, then opened. All right, she whispered. Wade moved behind her. His boots were soft on the plank floor. She felt his fingers touch the twine at her neck, careful as if he were untying a ribbon from a child's hair instead of removing a mark of shame. The knot had tightened during the ride. He worked at it slowly, never pulling hard. When the twine loosened, cold air touched the damp hair at her neck. Wade lifted the sack away. Nora kept her eyes closed. For one breath, 2 breaths, 3, there was only the crackle of the new fire and the low moan of wind outside. Then Wade inhaled. Not sharply, not like a man disgusted, more like someone seeing the first break in a storm cloud. Nora opened her eyes. Wade Mercer stood before her, with the flour sack hanging from one hand. Firelight revealed her fully now. Her dark brown hair had been cut unevenly just below her jaw, as if someone had done it in anger. A pale scar ran from the edge of her right eyebrow to the corner of her cheek. One eye was deep brown. The other was a pale blue-gray that looked almost silver in lamplight. It was the eye people noticed first. Then the scar. Then the way her face refused to look sorry for existing. Wade looked at her, and Nora forced herself not to turn away. There it was, she thought. Let him see, let him decide. His gaze moved over her face slowly, not with hunger, not with mockery, but with a kind of quiet grief that made her chest ache. At last, he placed the sack on the table. You must be cold, he said. Nora stared at him. That was all. No question, no flinch, no holy mutter about curses, no cruel softness of pity. Just you must be cold. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the cup. The water was plain and fresh and colder than she expected. She drank too fast, coughed once, and almost apologized. Wade was already turning away. There's stew, not fine cooking, but it'll warm you. I don't need much. You'll have what there is. He said it like a fact, not a favor. Nora watched him move around the cabin. He took a pot from the hearth hook, stirred its contents, added a little water, and set it near the growing flames. His shoulders were wide beneath his coat. His hands were scarred and steady. He did not look at her too often, and somehow that made her feel less exposed. The fire grew stronger. With warmth came pain. Her wrists throbbed, her feet ached. Her face, uncovered at last, felt naked in the orange light. Wade brought the stew in a chipped bowl and placed it before her with a spoon. Nora looked down. Chunks of potato, beans, a little rabbit meat. The smell rose rich and simple. Her stomach twisted with hunger. Eat, Wade said gently. She took one spoonful, then another. Her body betrayed her after that. She ate faster than she meant to, shame burning hot in her chest. Wade sat across from her with his own bowl and pretended not to notice. That kindness was almost worse than pity. Halfway through, Nora stopped. I can work for it. For what? The food, the fire, the ride. Wade looked up. No. Her hand tightened around the spoon. I won't be kept for charity. I didn't say charity. Then what is it? He leaned back slowly. Firelight caught the tired lines around his eyes. Decency. Nora laughed once, but there was no joy in it. That word has cost me more than hunger ever did. Wade studied her. Then someone used it wrong. Silence settled between them. Outside, the wind rose and snow tapped against the window like small fingers. Nora lowered her gaze to the blue ribbon tied around her wrist. It was faded nearly white in places. Wade's eyes followed the movement, but he did not ask. My sister tied this on me, Nora said before she could stop herself. Wade did not move. She was 13 then, said blue meant safe skies. Nora swallowed. There have not been many safe skies since. Where is she now? Nora's face hardened. Too much had already slipped out. Far from here, she said. It was not a lie, not fully. Wade nodded, accepting the wall she had placed between them. When supper ended, he took her bowl and set it aside. Then he crossed to the bed and lifted the folded quilt. You take the bed tonight. Nora stood too fast. No. Wade turned. I mean it, she said. I won't take your bed. You rode half frozen with a sack over your head. You'll take the bed. And where will you sleep? By the fire. This is your house. It is. His voice stayed calm. And in my house, a guest gets the bed when she's had a day like yours. Guest. The word struck her softly. Not property, not trouble, not burden. Guest. Nora looked at the bed, then at the old shawl on the peg. Your wife slept there. Yes. I don't want to take what was hers. For the first time, Wade's expression truly changed. Pain moved across his face, deep and quiet. After a moment, he said, Anne was kind. She'd be angry with me if I made you sleep on the floor. Nora had no answer to that. She sat carefully on the edge of the bed. The quilt smelled faintly of cedar. Her body wanted to collapse into it, but her mind stayed sharp, watching Wade gather a bearskin and blanket for himself. He placed the flour sack near the hearth. Nora stared at it. Wade followed her gaze. Without a word, he picked it up, opened the stove door, and pushed the sack into the flames. It caught slowly at first. Then the fire took it whole. Nora's breath shook. Wade closed the stove. No one wears that in this house, he said. Something broke inside her then, but not in the way cruelty had broken things before. This was different, like ice cracking over running water. She turned her face toward the wall before he could see her eyes fill. Wade lowered the lamp. The cabin dimmed to firelight and shadow. He stretched out near the hearth, one arm beneath his head, boots still on, as if he expected trouble even in sleep. Nora lay beneath Anne's quilt with her hands folded tight against her chest. For the first time in months, no one locked her door. For the first time in years, no one told her she was cursed before nightfall. And for the first time since Blackthorn Ranch, Nora Whitaker closed her eyes in a room with a man and did not feel afraid of him. But deep in the valley below, a rider was already carrying news toward Sela's Crow. The rejected bride had been taken to Timberline Ridge. Her face had been seen, and the mountain man who saved her had just made himself part of a secret that powerful men would kill to keep buried. Morning came pale and cold over Timberline Ridge. Wade woke before the sun, as he always did, but for a moment he did not move. He lay on the bearskin beside the hearth, listening to the cabin breathe around him. The fire had settled into soft red coals. Snow pressed against the window. The horse shifted outside beneath the lean-to, stamping once against the frozen ground. and from the bed came the quiet sound of Nora Whitaker sleeping. It had been 5 winters since Wade had heard another person sleep beneath his roof. He turned his head carefully. Nora lay curled on her side beneath Anne's old quilt, one hand tucked under her cheek, the other still holding that faded blue ribbon on her wrist. Even in sleep, her face carried caution. Her jaw was tight, her brow faintly drawn. She looked like a woman who expected kindness to vanish the moment she trusted it. Wade looked away before she opened her eyes and caught him watching. He rose quietly, pulled on his coat, and stepped outside into the blue edge of dawn. Snow had covered the yard in a clean white sheet. The trees stood heavy and silent. From the ridge, the valley below was hidden by cloud, as if Pine Hollow had never existed. For a few minutes, Wade wished that were true. He fed the horse, broke ice from the water trough, and brought in 2 armloads of wood. By the time he returned, Nora was standing near the bed with the quilt folded neatly in her arms. Her hair was uneven around her scarred face. Her gray dress was wrinkled from sleep. She looked tired, but her back was straight. "I should have been up before you," she said. Wade set the wood beside the hearth. "Why?" "To help. You needed sleep. I need to be useful." The words were too quick, too practiced. Wade studied her for a moment, then crouched to stir the coals. "Coffee first. Usefulness can wait." Nora looked as if she did not know whether to argue. He put the kettle on, then took a small tin from the shelf. When he opened it, only a thin layer of coffee remained at the bottom. He stared at it, remembering the supplies he had not bought. Nora noticed. "You spent your money on me." "No, Wade." It was the first time she used his name without hesitation. He glanced over his shoulder. Her mismatched eyes held his, one brown and one pale as winter's sky. "You were in town for supplies," she said. "You said so last night without meaning to. That $10 was for flour, coffee, nails, maybe salt. You gave it to Pike instead." Wade shut the tin. "I can trap, I can trade." "Because of me." "Because of him," Wade corrected. "Because of what he was doing." Nora looked down at her raw wrists. After a moment, she crossed the room and reached for the kindling box. Wade caught the movement. "Leave it." "I can build a fire." "I know." "Then let me." There was a quiet challenge in her voice, not anger, need. Wade stepped back. Nora knelt by the hearth and arranged the kindling with skilled hands. She did not do it like a helpless woman proving herself. She did it like someone who had kept many fires alive in hard weather. She blew gently until the flame caught, then fed it without smothering it. Wade watched, and a small piece of understanding settled in him. She did not want to be served. She wanted to know she still had power over something. When the coffee boiled, they shared it thin. Wade took the chipped blue cup and gave Nora the tin mug because it held more. She noticed and switched them when he turned away. He looked back and found the blue cup in her hands. "That one's mine," he said. "I know." The corner of her mouth lifted faintly. "You look like a man who needs stronger coffee than I do." Wade almost smiled. "Almost." By full daylight, Nora had swept the floor, washed the bowls, and reorganized the shelf of dry goods before Wade had finished sharpening his axe. She moved quietly but not timidly. If something was broken, she set it aside. If something was out of place, she fixed it. She found a torn work shirt near the bed, took thread from a small sewing roll in her pocket, and mended the sleeve with careful, even stitches. Wade did not know what to do with the sight of it. The cabin had been neat before. Now it was awake. Around noon, the wind settled enough for Wade to check the traps along the creek. He stood by the door with his rifle and coat. "I'll be gone an hour," he said, "maybe 2. Nora's hand stilled over the shirt. He saw the fear flash across her face, before she buried it. "You can bar the door after me," he said. "There's a pistol in the top drawer by the bed. It's loaded. You know how to use one." Her pale eyes sharpened. "Yes." He nodded. "Then use it if you need to." She stared at him. "You would leave a loaded pistol with me. You said you know how to use it. What if I use it on you?" Wade took his hat from the peg. "Then I reckon I misjudged you badly." For a breath, silence filled the cabin. Then Nora laughed. It was small and surprised, gone almost as soon as it came, but it changed her face. The scar did not vanish. The strange eye did not soften into something ordinary. Instead, all of it became part of a woman who had once known how to laugh and might learn again. Wade felt that laugh somewhere behind his ribs. He stepped outside before she could see it. The creek traps gave him 2 rabbits and 1 half-frozen boot someone must have lost months ago. By the time he returned, snow had started again in thin, slanting lines. Smoke rose from the chimney, stronger than before. He opened the door and stopped. The cabin smelled of stew. Not his usual rough stew, either. Something better. Nora had found dried onion, beans, the last carrots, and a pinch of herbs from a jar he had forgotten existed. His mended shirt hung over the chair. The floor was swept clean. Anne's shawl had been taken from the peg, shaken free of dust, and folded with care on the shelf. Nora stood near the hearth, stirring the pot. The pistol sat on the table within reach. She looked up, uncertain. "I should have asked before using things." Wade set the rabbits down. "You improved things." That was not permission. No, but it was welcome. Her face lowered toward the pot, but he saw the relief. They ate together at the table while snow darkened the window. Nora took small bites at first, still trained by hunger to make food last. Wade placed an extra piece of bread by her bowl without looking at her. She looked at it for a long time. "You keep doing that," she said. "Doing what?" "Offering kindness like it is nothing." He leaned back. "Maybe it should be nothing." "It never is." "Here it is." Nora's fingers touched the bread, but she did not pick it up. At last she said, "I was not meant to be Silas Crow's bride." Wade stayed still. She looked toward the fire, not at him. "That is what Pike told the crowd because it sounded less ugly than the truth. Crow does not marry women like me. He collects debts. My father owed him more than he could ever repay. So Crow took me into his house under papers no woman should have to sign." Wade's jaw tightened, but he kept quiet. "I worked there," Nora continued. "Cooked, washed, kept accounts, wrote letters for men who could not spell their own names. I did everything asked of me except one thing." "What thing?" Her eyes came back to his. "I would not kneel." The words were simple. They carried the weight of a whole life. Wade looked at her scar, then her ribbon, then her hands. "Is that how your face got marked?" Nora's mouth tightened. For a moment he thought she would close the door between them again. Instead, she touched the pale line on her cheek. "This came the day I told Silas Crow that paper could bind my labor, but not my soul." The fire snapped loudly. Wade's hands closed around his cup. Nora noticed. "Do not look like that." "Like what?" "Like you want to ride down the mountain tonight." "I do." "That would not help." "No," he said, "it would not." She studied him, as if measuring whether he understood the difference between anger and protection. Then she looked at the blue ribbon. "My sister Lily tied this on me before I left home. She said if I ever felt alone, I should look at it and remember someone loved me." Wade softened. "Where is Lily now?" Nora's face changed. Fear returned, deeper than before. "At Blackthorn Ranch." The cabin seemed colder, though the fire burned bright. "She is still there?" Wade asked. Nora nodded. Does Crow have papers on her too? Not yet, but he has something worse. He has her fear. Nora's voice shook and she hated herself for it. She is 18 now, but gentle, too gentle for that place. He told people she was simple, told her the same thing until she believed it. She thinks she cannot survive without him. Wade sat very still. Nora looked at him through gathering tears she refused to let fall. That is why I cannot be free, not truly. I left, but she stayed behind. Every breath I take up here feels stolen from her. Wade said nothing for so long that Nora turned away, ashamed of having spoken too much. Then he reached across the table and placed one calloused hand beside hers. Not on top of it. Beside it. Close enough to offer, not close enough to claim. We'll get her out, he said. Nora stared at him. You say that like it is simple. No, I say it like it is decided. Silas Crow has money, men, a judge who eats at his table, a sheriff who owes him favors. You have one cabin and 2 rabbits. One cabin, Wade said. 2 rabbits, a good horse, mountain trails Crow's men don't know, and a woman brave enough to stand with a sack over her head and still not bow. Her breath caught. Nora, he said quietly, that is not nothing. The tears came then, though she turned her face to hide them. Wade let her have that dignity. Outside, the snow fell thicker, sealing the cabin away from the valley. Inside, the firelight held them in a circle of warmth neither fully trusted yet. After a while, Nora wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand and looked at him. If this moment touched your heart, she said softly, almost as if speaking to the quiet room and not only to Wade, then maybe you understand why one small kindness can feel like a door opening. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. Wade did not answer. He only reached for the coffee pot and poured the last of it into her cup. That night Nora slept in the bed again, but this time she did not face the wall. Wade lay by the hearth, eyes open, listening to the wind and thinking of Blackthorn Ranch. Before dawn, he rose and crossed to the drawer near the bed. Nora woke at the sound. "What are you doing?" she asked. Wade opened the drawer and took out an old folded map of the Southern Valley. Then he set it on the table between them. Nora sat up slowly. The map showed Pine Hollow, the river crossing, old mining roads, and the long fenced land marked in faded ink. Blackthorn Ranch. Wade placed a finger on the mountain trail above it. "Tell me where they keep your sister," he said. Nora stared at the map, then at him. For the first time since the sack burned, hope frightened her more than fear. Because hope meant she could lose something again. Nora stared at the map until the lines blurred. Blackthorn Ranch was only ink on paper, but to her it seemed alive. The long fence line, the river bend, the back road used by cattle hands, the square mark that showed the main house where Silas Crow held court like a king in a land that had forgotten mercy. And somewhere inside that house was Lily. Her little sister. Her safe sky. Wade stood across the table, one hand resting near the edge of the map, waiting. He did not hurry her. He did not say brave words to fill the silence. The fire behind him painted warm light along his rough face, but his eyes remained steady and serious. "Here," Nora said at last. Her finger touched the lower wing of the ranch house. "Servants' rooms." "No, not anymore." Her voice was quiet. "That was where Lily slept when I was still there. A small room with one window facing the kitchen garden. But after I ran, Crow would have moved her closer. He would not trust the back halls again." Wade leaned closer, studying the lines. "Where would he keep her?" Nora's finger moved to a square room near the front of the house. "His late wife's sewing room. It has one door, one narrow window, and a bell pull that rings in the hallway. He used to keep account books there when visitors came. It is close enough for him to watch and far enough from the kitchen that servants cannot hear everything. The words came easily at first, then her breath caught. She could see the room too clearly. The yellow wallpaper faded near the window, the cracked mirror, the little table where Mrs. Crow once stitched baby clothes for a child that never came. Lily sitting there with her hands folded, believing every lie told to her. Wade noticed her face. "We do not have to do this all at once," he said. "Yes, we do. Nora. If I stop, I will start feeling it." She pressed her palm flat against the map. "And if I start feeling it, I may not be able to speak." Wade grew still. Then he nodded. "Tell me." So she did. She told him of Blackthorn Ranch, not as Pike had spoken of it in Pine Hollow, but as a person who had known every shadow of that place. The main house sat on a rise above cottonwoods, whitewashed and proud from the road, but cold inside even in summer. The front porch faced the valley like a judge's bench. Men arrived there smiling and left with papers they did not fully understand. Widows lost grazing rights. Small ranchers signed away water access. Miners borrowed against claims and found themselves ruined by interest before the snow melted. Silas Crow never needed to raise his voice in town. Others raised theirs for him. Nora's father had been one of those men. Henry Whitaker was not wicked, Nora said, looking down. But he was weak in the places a father ought to be strong. After my mother died, he took to cards, then whiskey, then debts. He kept promising he would win back what he lost. Instead, he lost our mule, our field, then the house. And Crow held the paper, Wade said. Yes. How old were you? 23 when I signed. Lily was 15. Wade's jaw tightened. You signed to save her. Nora's mouth trembled, but she held it firm. I thought if I gave Crow my labor, he would leave Lily alone. I thought 7 years in his house was better than both of us sleeping under a bridge. Did you know what kind of man he was? Not enough. She folded her arms over herself, though the cabin was warm. He was polite at first. That was the worst part. People think cruelty always announces itself with a shout. It does not. Sometimes it opens doors. Sometimes it says, Miss Whitaker, you are safe here. Sometimes it gives you a room with a clean blanket and waits until you are grateful before it shows you the lock. Wade said nothing, but his hand curled slowly on the table. Nora kept speaking because stopping felt worse. For months she had worked from before dawn until lamplight. She cooked, cleaned, copied ledgers, wrote letters, mended curtains, and managed shelves of jars in the pantry. Silas Crow praised her in front of guests, then corrected her in private for not lowering her eyes. If a spoon was misplaced, he called it pride. If she answered clearly, he called it insolence. If she stood silent, he called it defiance. He wanted me small, Nora said, not just obedient, small. Wade's gaze lifted to her face. But you would not be. I tried, she admitted. For Lily, I tried. I swallowed words until they cut me going down. I apologized when I had done nothing wrong. I smiled when men at his table spoke about me as if I were furniture. I told myself pride was a luxury poor women could not afford. She looked at the blue ribbon on her wrist. Then one night Lily came to visit. Crow allowed it because he wanted me thankful. She had grown thin, too quiet. She said father had sent her to work in the laundry house at Blackthorn because the remaining debt was still unpaid. I knew then Crow never meant to free us. He meant to take one sister at a time. The fire popped. Outside, snow slid from the roof with a soft thump. Wade's voice was low when he asked, Is that when you ran? No, that is when I began watching. A different look entered Nora's eyes then. Not fear, not grief, something sharper. I had access to his ledgers. He thought my face made me less dangerous, as if a woman people mocked could not also read numbers, but I saw what he was doing. False land sales. Names of dead men still owing him money. Water deeds changed after signatures. He had 2 sets of books, one for the law, one for himself. Wade leaned forward. Did you take anything? Nora hesitated. The cabin seemed to wait with him. Yes, she whispered, copies not all enough. Where are they? Her eyes moved toward the window, toward the white world beyond it. Hidden. Wade did not ask where. That restraint nearly undid her. Instead, he asked, does Crow know? He suspects. That is why Pike covered my face, not because he was ashamed of how I looked, because if too many people saw me, too many might remember me. Crow wants the world to think I am nothing, a mad woman, a rejected bride, a nameless trouble sold away. Wade stood and crossed slowly to the hearth. He placed another log on the fire, though it did not need one. When did he mark your face? He asked. Nora went very still. For a long moment she could not answer. Wade turned from the hearth. You do not have to say. I want to. But wanting and being able were not the same. She took a breath. It was the night I told him I knew about the water deeds. He had sold the same spring rights to 3 families. One had already packed for Oregon after losing everything. I told him I would speak to Marshal Vance in Pine Hollow. The marshal. A good man once, but tired. Crow's money had tired him further. Wade understood. Nora touched the scar from brow to cheek. Crow had a ring, gold with a black stone. He struck me with it. The stone split the skin. I remember the sound more than the pain, not loud, just a small crack inside my head. After that, he cut my hair and told the household I had injured myself in a fit. Wade's face darkened. Nora lifted a hand before he could speak. I am still here. That does not make it right. No, but it makes me more than what he did. The words hung between them. Wade's anger softened into something deeper. Respect, sorrow, maybe a kind of tenderness he was not ready to name. What happened after? He asked. I waited 3 nights. Then I took the copies, tied Lily's ribbon tighter, and ran. You left Lily. The words were not accusing. That almost made them hurt more. Nora nodded. I told myself I would come back with help, but Crow sent men after me. Every town I reached, his story arrived first. Mad, thief, cursed, dangerous. I worked under false names, slept in barns, hid in gullies. Then Pike found me near Red Kettle Creek. He had Crow's paper in his pocket and 2 men at his back. And that brought you to the wagon in Pine Hollow. Yes. Silence filled the cabin. Nora wrapped both arms around herself and stared at the map. She expected shame to rise, as it always did after the telling. Shame for signing. Shame for running. Shame for leaving Lily behind. Shame for standing in the square and not finding a way to disappear through the earth. But Wade did not give shame a place to stand. He came back to the table and turned the map slightly. Show me the servants' gate. She blinked at him. What? The servants' gate. If we go for Lily, we need more than grief. We need a way in. Nora stared at him. You still mean it? I said I did. After hearing all that. Especially after hearing all that. She looked away before he saw how his words struck her, but he saw anyway. She pointed to the east side of the map. There is a kitchen yard here, a narrow gate near the smokehouse. It sticks in wet weather. The cook used to curse it every spring. Who is the cook? Mrs. Bell was. She died last winter. Now it may be Rosa Medina. She was kind to Lily, kind to me too when she could be. Would she help? If she is still there, yes. But Crow watches kindness like other men watch cards. Anyone who helped me paid for it somehow. Wade nodded slowly. Then we start quiet. How? I know a trader who carries pelts to Blackthorn twice a month. Old Ephraim Cole Talks too much but hears more than folks know. He can find out where Lily sleeps, how many men Crow keeps close, whether Rosa is still in the kitchen. Nora's hope flickered, dangerous and bright. And if Ephraim refuses? He owes me. For what? Wade's face changed. A memory crossed it like a cloud shadow. 3 winters ago, his boy got lost above Miller's Pass. I found him before the wolves did. Nora stared. People in Pine Hollow had called Wade hard. They had not said anything about the lives hidden inside that hardness. Why did you not tell me? Didn't come up. For the first time that day, Nora almost smiled. Then a sound outside made both of them freeze. A horse. Not theirs, another one moving slow through the snow. Wade lifted one finger to his lips, then took his rifle from above the hearth. Nora moved without being told, taking the pistol from the drawer by the bed. Her hand shook only once before steadying. The horse stopped outside the cabin. Someone knocked on the door. 3 soft taps. Then a voice called through the wood. Wade Mercer, I got a message from Pine Hollow. Wade looked at Nora. Her face had gone pale. From who? Wade called. A pause. Then the answer came. Sela's Crow. The cabin seemed to shrink around them. Wade stepped toward the door, rifle low but ready. Nora reached for his sleeve. No, she whispered. He looked down at her hand. She let go quickly, as if ashamed of touching him. But Wade caught her fingers before they fell away. Just for 1 second. Warm, steady, real. Then he released her and opened the door. A young rider stood in the snow, hat pulled low, breath white in the cold. He held out a folded paper sealed with black wax. Wade took it, but did not open it until the rider left. Nora stood beside the table, pistol still in hand, her eyes fixed on the seal. Wade broke it. The note was short. He read it once, then again. What does it say? Nora asked. Wade's face had gone hard as mountain stone. He handed it to her. Nora read the words by firelight, and all the warmth left her body. Miss Whitaker belongs to Blackthorn Ranch by legal debt. Return her before Sunday noon, or the younger sister pays what the elder owes. The paper shook in Nora's hand. Far below Timberline Ridge, Sela's Crow had not only found her. He had reminded her exactly where her heart was chained. The note lay on Wade Mercer's table like a live coal. Nora read it 3 times, though the words did not change. Each time they seemed to cut deeper. Return her before Sunday noon, or the younger sister pays what the elder owes. Outside, snow slid down the cabin roof in a heavy sheet. The sound made Nora flinch. She hated that she flinched. She hated that one black wax seal could drag her back into Sela's Crow's house as surely as any rope. Wade stood beside the table, his face unreadable. Only his hands gave him away. They were still too still. Nora knew men who shouted when angry, men who threw cups, kicked chairs, slammed doors. Wade did none of that. His anger settled lower, quieter, more dangerous because it had discipline. He will hurt Lily, Nora whispered. We do not know that. I know him. Wade looked at her then. The fire threw light across her scar, across the pale eye that so many fools had called unnatural. To Wade, there was nothing unnatural about her. She looked like winter after a hard storm. Marked, yes. Changed, yes, but still standing under the sky. What does he want? Wade asked. Fear, Nora said. He wants me to come running because he knows I will not gamble with her. He also wants the papers you took. Her eyes shifted. Wade had not pressed her before. He had let her keep the hiding place secret. That trust had sat between them like a fragile cup on a shelf. Now the cup had to be lifted. Nora crossed to the bed, knelt beside it, and pulled loose a floorboard beneath the frame. Wade's brows drew together, but he said nothing as she reached into the dark space and took out a flat oilcloth packet tied with string. She carried it to the table. "This is not everything," she said, "but it is enough to ruin him if the right man sees it." Wade untied the packet carefully. Inside were copied ledger pages, letters, water deeds, receipts with false names, and one small note in Lily's careful hand. Nora snatched that one before Wade could read it. He noticed, then looked back at the papers. "Why not take these to the law?" "Which law?" Nora asked bitterly. "The sheriff who drinks Crow's whiskey, the judge who hunts on his land, the marshal who looks tired every time a poor person speaks." Wade folded one receipt and set it aside. "There is a federal marshal named Elias Boone. He passes through Pine Hollow twice a season. Fair man from what I know." "I have heard that before." "About him. About fair men." Wade accepted the wound behind her words. A knock came at the door before either could say more. Nora grabbed the pistol. Wade took his rifle and moved to the side window. He looked out, then lowered the gun a little. "Amos Reed," he said. The blacksmith from Pine Hollow stood in the snow with a mule behind him and a heavy coat pulled tight around his broad chest. Wade opened the door, and cold air rushed in with him. Amos stepped inside, shaking snow from his hat. His eyes went first to Nora, then quickly away, not in disgust but out of respect. "Ma'am," he said. Nora nodded. Wade shut the door. "You rode up here in this weather." "Had reason." Amos pulled off one glove and reached inside his coat. "That note Crow sent you was not the only one moving today." He placed a folded paper on the table. Wade opened it. Nora saw the official stamp and felt her stomach drop. "What is it?" she asked. Amos sighed. "Crow filed a claim in Pine Hollow. Says Miss Whitaker is bound to Blackthorn by debt contract and that you, Wade, are hiding stolen property." Wade's mouth tightened. "Property." "I argued with the sheriff," Amos said. "Told him no decent law calls a woman property. He told me decent law and written law do not always sit at the same table." Nora closed her eyes. For a moment she could smell Blackthorn again, polished wood, ink, Sela's Crow's cologne, papers sliding across a desk like chains made from words. "There is more," Amos said carefully. "Sheriff Cole will ride up tomorrow with 2 deputies unless someone higher stops him." Wade looked toward the window, thinking. Nora's voice came low. "Then I must go." "No," Wade said. "I will not let Lily pay for me. And if you go, Crow wins both of you. He already has her." "Not for long." Nora rounded on him, tears bright but unshed. "You keep saying that as if courage can open locked doors." "Sometimes it can. Sometimes it gets people buried." The room fell silent. Amos lowered his gaze, uncomfortable with the tenderness and fear passing between them. Wade stepped closer to Nora, but stopped before he crowded her. "I will not order you to stay," he said. "I have no right, but listen to me before you decide. If you ride to Blackthorn tonight alone and scared, Crow will take the papers, silence you, and keep Lily anyway. He does not honor bargains, he uses them." Nora's lips parted, but no answer came. She knew he was right. That was the cruel part. Wade turned to Amos. "Where is Marshal Boone?" "Silver Creek, last I heard. Half a day east if the pass is open." "Can you get word to him?" "In this snow?" "You came here." Amos gave a grim smile. "Fair point." Wade took the oilcloth packet and separated several papers. "Take copies, not all, enough to make him ride fast." Nora stiffened. "Those are mine." Wade looked at her. "Yes, so you decide." He pushed the papers toward her, not Amos. That small act settled something inside her. For years, men had taken papers from her hand. Contracts, letters, proof, choices. Wade gave them back. Nora chose 4 pages and 1 letter bearing Silas Crow's signature. She wrapped them in a clean cloth and gave them to Amos. "If Marshal Boone is fair," she said, "tell him Lily Whitaker is being held at Blackthorn Ranch against her true will. Tell him Silas Crow hides his crimes behind debt papers. Tell him Nora Whitaker will testify if her sister is brought safe." Amos took the bundle with solemn care. "I'll tell him." He hesitated, then added, "Ma'am, what happened in Pine Hollow yesterday was shameful. I should have done more before Wade spoke." Nora looked at him. The apology was clumsy but real. "You spoke," she said, "most only watched." Amos swallowed and nodded. Wade stepped outside with him to help ready the mule. Nora remained near the fire, arms folded tight, listening to low male voices through the door. She could not hear the words, but she heard the weight in them. When Wade returned, snow dusted his shoulders. "He'll go by the North Trail," Wade said. "Crow's men will watch the main road." Nora nodded. The cabin felt smaller now. The table was covered in papers. The map lay open. The pistol rested near the blue cup. Her hidden life had been pulled into the light, and there was no folding it back away. Wade took off his coat and hung it beside Anne's old shawl. Nora looked at the shawl. Would she hate me? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Wade turned. "Your wife," Nora said. "Would she hate that I am here, that I sleep in her bed, drink from her cups, bring danger to her home?" Wade's face softened with pain. "No," he said. "Anne would have opened the door before I reached the latch." Nora looked down. "And she would have liked you," he added. Her throat tightened. "You cannot know that." "She liked stubborn women." A faint smile touched Nora's mouth, then faded. Wade came to the table and leaned over the map. "We have until Sunday noon. Crow expects you to come straight down the main trail, so we will not." "What will we do?" "First, we keep you out of the sheriff's hands. Second, we get word from Marshal Boone. Third, we find a way to reach Lily before Crow moves her." "And if none of that works?" Wade looked at her then, steady and unafraid. "Then I ride with you to Blackthorn and stand beside you at the gate." Nora's breath caught. Not before her, not over her, beside her. For a woman who had spent years being pushed behind doors and under sacks, beside felt like a holy word. The fire cracked softly. Wade reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out something small, a silver button, worn dull with age. "This was from Anne's wedding dress," he said. "I kept it because grief makes men foolish about little things." Nora stared at it in his palm. He set it beside the blue ribbon on her wrist. "I am not giving it to replace anything," he said. "Just to say this house has known love before, it can know protection now." Nora touched the button with one finger. A tear slipped down before she could stop it. Wade did not wipe it away. He did not pretend not to see. He only stood quietly with her in the firelight. If you believe one honest heart can stand against a powerful lie, stay with this story, because Nora and Wade's hardest choice is still waiting beyond the snow. That night, neither of them slept much. Near midnight, wind struck the cabin hard enough to rattle the shutters. Nora sat up in the bed. Wade was already awake by the fire, rifle across his knees. "What is it?" she whispered. He lifted a hand. "Hoofbeats." "Not many." "One horse coming fast." Wade opened the door before the rider reached the porch. A boy nearly fell from the saddle into the snow. He could not have been more than 14, his face blue with cold, his breath ragged. "Mr. Mercer," he gasped, "from Amos Reed." Wade caught him by the shoulders. "Speak." The boy held out a torn scrap of paper. Nora rose from the bed, her heart hammering. Wade read it by firelight. His face changed. "What?" Nora asked. He looked up. Amos never reached Silver Creek. The boy swallowed hard. "They found his mule loose near Crow's south fence," he said, "and Blackthorn riders are already coming up the mountain." The boy's words left the cabin colder than the storm outside. Blackthorn riders are already coming up the mountain. Nora stood beside the bed with Anne's quilt clutched in one hand, her bare feet on the plank floor, her face pale in the firelight. For a moment, she was not in Wade Mercer's cabin anymore. She was back in Silas Crow's hallway, hearing boots stop outside a locked door. Wade moved first. He pulled the boy inside, shut the door, and dropped the heavy bar across it. "What is your name?" he asked. "Ben," the boy said, shaking so badly his teeth clicked. "Ben Reed. Amos is my uncle." Wade guided him to the chair. "Sit, Nora, blankets." Nora obeyed at once, wrapping the boy's shoulders while Wade poured the last warm coffee into a cup. Ben held it with both hands, spilling some over his fingers. "Tell it slow," Wade said. "Everything you saw." Ben swallowed. "Uncle Amos told me to stay at the forge, but I followed him a ways, not close. I wanted to see if he made the pass. The snow was bad near Crow's south fence. I saw 3 riders come out from the trees. They stopped him. He talked with them, then one of them took his saddlebag." "The papers," Nora whispered. Ben nodded, eyes wide with guilt. "I think so. Uncle Amos tried to ride away, but they pulled him down. I ran before they saw me. Later, his mule came loose on the road. No Uncle Amos." Wade's face did not change, but the room seemed to darken around him. "Was Amos alive when you ran?" he asked. "Yes, they had him standing. One man hit him, but he was standing." Nora gripped the back of the chair. "Crow has the copies now." "Some copies," Wade said. "But he knows we sent them." He already knew enough. Ben looked between them. "There was more. I heard one man say Mr. Crow wanted the woman brought down alive before Sunday, said the mountain man could be dealt with after." Nora's stomach turned. Wade crossed to the wall and took down his rifle. He checked the chamber, then moved to a wooden chest beneath the shelf. Inside were cartridges, a hunting knife, flint, rope, and 2 small oilcloth bundles. "We leave," he said. Nora stared. "Leave?" "Crow expects us to wait here. He expects fear to pin us in place. This is your home. It is also the first place they will come." Nora looked around the cabin. The table, the fire, the folded shawl, the bed where she had finally slept without a locked door. The thought of abandoning it felt like losing shelter all over again. Wade saw it on her face. "We are not surrendering it," he said. "We are stepping away so they find an empty nest." "And where do we go?" "Old Prospect Station." Ben lifted his head. "The burned mining camp." "Above it," Wade said, "there is a stone storehouse the fire missed. No road reaches it, only goat trails and one old ore path. Crow's men will not know it." Nora breathed in, forcing herself steady. "Can Ben ride?" The boy straightened with wounded pride. "I rode here, did I?" "You nearly fell from the saddle," Wade said. "But I did not." Despite the fear, Nora almost smiled. The boy had Amos Reed's stubbornness. Wade began packing with fast, careful movements. Flour enough for 2 days, beans, jerky, a coffee tin though it was nearly empty, a blanket roll. The packet of original papers Nora had hidden under the floor. He did not touch it until she nodded. That mattered. Everything he did, he made room for her choice. Nora dressed quickly, then tied Lily's blue ribbon tighter around her wrist. Beside it, she tucked Anne's silver button into her sleeve cuff, not as a claim but as a promise. This house had known love before. It would know it again if they survived the night. Hoofbeats sounded faintly below the ridge. Not close yet. But coming. Wade blew out the lamp, back door. Snow swept into the cabin as they slipped outside. The horse under the linta tossed its head, nervous from the distant sound of riders. Wade moved to calm him with a hand along the neck. Nora took Ben's reins and helped the boy mount, though his fingers were clumsy with cold. They did not take the main trail. Wade led them behind the cabin, through a narrow cut between pines where branches dragged snow across their shoulders. The night had no moon. Only the snow gave shape to the world, pale and shifting beneath the dark trees. Nora rode behind Wade, one hand gripping the saddle horn, the other pressed to the oilcloth packet beneath her coat. The papers felt heavier than iron. After a mile, the cabin disappeared behind the trees. After 2, they heard the first shout far below. They found it, Ben whispered. Wade raised a hand for silence. The 3 riders stopped beneath a wall of pine. From that height, Nora could see a thin glow through the storm, torches moving around the cabin, men searching the yard. One light pushed through the window, then another. Her heart squeezed. Wade watched without speaking. Then suddenly, flames burst bright behind the cabin glass. Nora gasped. No, she breathed. Wade's jaw clenched. The glow grew, orange against the snow. Smoke rose through the pines. Crow's riders had not found them, so they burned the one place that had offered her peace. Nora turned to Wade, expecting rage. What she saw was worse. Grief held silent. I am sorry, she whispered. He did not look at her. Crow did this, not you. But if I had never. Wade turned then and his voice cut through the wind. Do not finish that. Nora froze. His face softened at once, but the firmness stayed. You did not bring cruelty into my house. You brought truth. Men like Crow burn what they cannot own. That blame belongs to him. The words entered her slowly, like warmth returning to frozen hands. Behind them the cabin burned. Ahead the mountain waited. They rode on. By dawn they reached Old Prospect Station. Once, miners had lived there in tents and rough shacks, chasing silver that never came. Now only blackened beams jutted from the snow below the ridge. Above the old camp stood the stone storehouse, half buried against the mountain, its iron door rusted but strong. Wade forced it open with his shoulder. Inside smelled of dust, rock, and old ash. It was cold but dry. A narrow window faced the valley. From there they could see smoke still lifting from Timberline Ridge. Ben sank against the wall, exhausted. Nora stood by the window, looking at the distant smoke until her eyes burned. Wade came beside her. For a moment neither spoke. Then she reached into her coat and took out the oilcloth packet. If Crow wants these papers badly enough to burn your home, she said, then they are worth more than I understood. Wade looked at her. What else is in there? Nora untied the packet with shaking fingers. She separated the ledger copies, deeds, and receipts. At the very bottom was a small envelope she had never opened. The seal was cracked from weather and time. On the front, in Mrs. Crow's neat hand, were 3 words. For Lily Whitaker. Nora's breath caught. I thought this was another household letter, she whispered. Wade watched her face. Open it. Nora broke the seal. Inside was a letter and a folded certificate. As she read, the world seemed to tilt beneath her. Mrs. Crow had written that Lily was not bound by any debt at all. Before her death, she had quietly paid the remaining Whitaker debt from her own account, pitying the sisters. Silas Crow had hidden the payment and kept using the debt as a chain. Nora lowered the paper, her hand trembling. Lily is free, she said. Wade stepped closer, legally. Nora handed him the certificate. She has been free for over a year. Tears filled Nora's eyes, but they were not gentle tears. They burned. All this time, she whispered, he kept her with a lie. Ben, pale and listening from the floor, looked up. Then Marshal Boone can help, right? Wade folded the certificate carefully. If we can reach him. Nora looked toward the valley, where smoke still rose from what had been Wade's home. We will, she said. Her voice no longer trembled. Wade saw the change. The woman who had once stood in Pine Hollow with a sack over her head was still afraid, still wounded, still carrying more pain than any person should. But beneath it, something fierce had awakened. Crow had burned the cabin. He had stolen the copies. He had trapped Amos and threatened Lily. But now Nora held the one paper he had tried hardest to bury. And by sundown, either Marshal Elias Boone would see it, or Nora Whitaker would walk into Blackthorn Ranch herself with the truth in her hand. By noon, the storm had broken, leaving the mountains bright, cold, and dangerous. Sunlight flashed across the snow until every ridge looked sharp enough to cut. From the narrow window of the old stone storehouse, Nora Whitaker watched smoke fade from Timberline Ridge. Wade's cabin was gone now. Only a dark stain remained between the pines. He had not spoken of it again. That worried her more than anger would have. Wade Mercer moved around the storehouse with quiet purpose, checking the rifle, sorting food, studying the valley through a spyglass with one cracked lens. He had lost the one place where his memories lived, yet he kept his grief folded tight, as if he had no right to feel it while Lily was still trapped. Nora knew that kind of silence. It was the kind that turned pain into stone. Ben Reed slept near the far wall, wrapped in 2 blankets, one hand still curled around the empty coffee cup. The boy had ridden through snow, fear, and darkness to warn them. He looked younger asleep. 14, maybe even 13 beneath the soot and stubbornness. Nora stood beside the small wooden crate they used as a table. On it lay Mrs. Crow's letter, the paid debt certificate, Wade's old map, and Anne's silver button. Beside them was the blue ribbon from Lily, untied from Nora's wrist for the first time in years. She had laid it flat over the certificate. A promise over proof. Wade came to the crate and looked down at it. You took it off, he said. Only for a while. Why? Nora touched the ribbon lightly. Because I used to wear it to remember Lily loved me. Now I need it to remind me she is not Crow's to keep. Wade nodded. Outside, a raven called from the burned timbers below the ridge. Nora looked toward the door. We should ride now. To Silver Creek. To Marshal Boone. Wade's face tightened. The pass is open, but Crow's men will expect that. They took Amos near the south fence. They will watch every road leading east. Then we use the mining trail. That trail crosses open ground for near a mile. And waiting here changes nothing. He studied her for a long moment. You are not wrong. The words should have steadied her. Instead, they made her feel the full weight of what came next. They woke Ben, fed him the last of the warmed beans, and packed quickly. Wade wrapped the certificate and letter in oilcloth and offered the packet to Nora. She looked at it, then pushed it back toward him. You carry it. His brows drew together. If I am taken, Crow will search me first, she said. He still thinks I am the one holding his ruin. He will not think to look inside your coat lining. Wade did not like it, but he understood. He cut a small slit inside his coat, slid the packet deep beneath the lining, and stitched it closed with Nora's needle. Her fingers brushed his chest once as she tied the last knot. Both of them went still. It was not romance like songs described it. No sweeping music. No moonlit promises. Just her cold fingers near his heart and his breath catching because she was close enough to feel the truth he had not spoken. Nora lowered her hand. Done, she said. Wade's voice came rougher than before. Good. They left Old Prospect by the back slope, leading the horses over stone where tracks would not show. The sun sat high, turning the snow soft on top but icy beneath. More than once Ben's horse slipped, and Wade had to steady the reins. Nora rode between them, eyes fixed on the tree line below. Every shadow looked like a man. Every snapped branch sounded like a rifle being raised. For 2 hours they moved without trouble. Then Wade lifted one hand. They stopped at the edge of a ridge where the mining trail dropped toward a frozen creek. Below, 3 riders waited among the cottonwoods. Blackthorn men. Nora recognized the long tan coat of Harlan Voss, Crow's foreman. He had been at the ranch for years, loyal not because he believed in Crow, but because cruel men often enjoy standing close to power. Beside him were 2 younger hands, both armed, both watching the trail. Ben whispered, "Can we go around?" Wade scanned the slope, "Not with horses." "Then we turn back," Nora said. Wade shook his head. "They will have men behind us by now. This is a net." Nora looked down again. Voss dismounted and lit a cigarette, calm as a man waiting for dinner. He knew they had to pass. "What if I go down alone?" she asked. "No. They want me. They want the papers too. They do not know you have them." Wade's eyes hardened. "Nora, if I walk down there, I can hold them long enough for you and Ben to cut west through the creek bed. And leave you." "You said beside me, not over me," she reminded him. "Beside me means trusting my mind even when you hate the plan." The words struck him visibly. Ben looked scared enough to be sick. Wade leaned close, his voice low. "If you do this, I come when you give the sign." "What sign?" "You will know." "That is not a plan." "No," he said, "it is trust." For a breath, they simply looked at each other. Then Nora dismounted. She handed her reins to Ben, straightened her torn gray dress, and began walking down the snowy trail with empty hands raised just enough to be seen. Voss noticed her halfway down. "Well now," he called, smiling around his cigarette. "Miss Whitaker, Mr. Crow has been worried sick." "I doubt he knows how," Nora said. The smile thinned. "Still sharp, I see. Where is Amos Reed?" Voss dropped the cigarette and crushed it under his boot. "Alive, for now." Nora's heart lurched, but she kept her face still. "And Lily?" "Comfortable enough, better than you deserve." One of the younger men laughed. Nora looked at him until the laugh died. Voss stepped closer. "You caused a powerful amount of trouble for a woman with nowhere to go, burned cabin behind you, law confused, men riding all over the mountain. Was it worth it?" Nora thought of Wade giving her the bed, the sack burning in the stove, the certificate under his coat, Lily's ribbon lying across proof of freedom. "Yes," she said. Voss's eyes narrowed. From the corner of her vision, Nora saw movement high on the ridge. Ben leading the horses into the creek bed. Wade sliding through the pines with the quiet grace of a mountain cat. She needed time. "Crow lied to you too," she said. Voss scoffed. "Mr. Crow pays me. With stolen money. Money spends the same. Does it spend the same in prison?" The younger men shifted. Voss noticed, careful. Nora stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to make them lean in. "Mrs. Crow paid the Whitaker debt before she died. Lily is free. I have proof." That hit harder than she expected. One of the young riders, a red-haired boy no older than 20, frowned. "Mr. Crow said the girl owed 7 years. Mr. Crow says many things." Voss turned sharply. "Shut your mouth." Nora smiled, not because she felt brave, but because fear had no more room inside her. "You are not angry because I lie, Harlan. You are angry because you believe me." His hand moved toward his pistol. A shot cracked from the trees. Not at Voss. At the branch above him. Snow dumped from the pine in a heavy white sheet, crashing over Voss and startling the horses. One reared. The young men cursed and grabbed for reins. Wade's sign. Nora dropped low and ran. After her, Voss shouted, shaking snow from his shoulders. But Wade was already between them. He came out of the trees with his rifle raised, not firing wildly, not hunting for blood, only forcing space between Nora and the men who wanted to take her. "Let her pass," he said. Voss drew his pistol halfway. Wade's rifle did not move. The foreman looked into Wade's face and saw no bluff there. For 3 long seconds, all the mountain held still. Then Ben appeared from the creek bed with Nora's horse, Nora. She ran to him, grabbed the saddle and climbed up. Wade backed away step by step, keeping his rifle steady until he reached his own horse. Voss spat into the snow. "Crow will not stop." Nora looked back from the saddle. "Neither will I." They rode hard through the creek bed, water cracking beneath the horses' hooves, ice splashing up around their legs. Behind them, Voss shouted orders, but his men had lost precious minutes calming their mounts. Wade led Nora and Ben west first, then sharply east through a narrow cut hidden behind fallen spruce. The path climbed so steeply that the horses had to fight for every step. By the time they reached the upper ridge, no riders followed. But Nora did not feel safe. Not yet. Near dusk, they saw the lights of Silver Creek below. A small town, a white church, a marshal's office near the livery. Hope rose so fast Nora almost feared it. They rode down the final slope with the last red light of sunset behind them. But as they entered the main street, Wade slowed. The marshal's office door stood open. A chair lay overturned inside. And nailed to the post outside was Amos Reed's blacksmith apron, stained with mud and torn down the middle. Ben made a broken sound. Nora looked at Wade. Then a voice called from the shadows of the livery. "If you came looking for Marshal Boone, you are too late." A wounded man stepped into the lantern light, one hand pressed to his side. It was Amos Reed. And in his other hand, he held Marshal Boone's badge. For one terrible moment, Ben Reed forgot how to breathe. The boy slid from his horse and stumbled toward his uncle, but Amos lifted one shaking hand. "Easy," the blacksmith said. "I'm still standing, ain't I?" He was standing, but barely. His coat was torn at the shoulder. One side of his face was bruised dark, and his beard was stiff with dried blood from a split lip. His left hand held Marshal Boone's badge as if it were the last honest thing left in Silver Creek. Wade dismounted fast and caught Amos before his knees weakened. "Inside," Wade said. "No," Amos rasped. "Not the office. Crow's men already searched it." Nora looked toward the open marshal's door. A lantern burned inside, throwing light over scattered papers and an overturned chair. It looked less like a law office now and more like a place where justice had been dragged out by the collar. "Where is Marshal Boone?" she asked. Amos's eyes moved to her, and shame passed across his battered face. "They took him." Ben's voice cracked. "Who took him?" "Crow's riders, 4 of them, maybe 5. They were waiting when I reached town." Amos swallowed hard. "I got to Boone, gave him the papers. He believed enough to saddle up right then. Said he would ride to Pine Hollow with me and put Crow's claim under federal review." "And then?" Wade asked. "They hid us behind the livery. Boone fought like a man half his age, but they had numbers. Took his badge, his papers, and him." Amos lifted the badge. "This fell in the mud. I kept it hidden." Nora felt the last bit of hope sway under her feet. Wade's cabin was burned. Their copies were stolen. Marshall Boone was taken. Lily was still in Blackthorn Ranch, and Sela's crow's reach had stretched farther than even Nora feared. But the certificate was still safe. It was stitched inside Wade's coat, near his heart. Wade helped Amos into the shadow beside the livery. "Can you ride?" Amos gave a rough laugh, then winced. "Not far, but I can sit a horse if the choice is that or dying in an alley." Ben's face went pale. "Uncle Amos." "I said I am standing." "You are leaning." "Standing with assistance, then." Even Nora, frightened as she was, felt a small warmth at the old man's stubbornness. Wade looked down the street. Silver Creek was too quiet. Curtains moved in dark windows. People were awake, watching, but no one stepped outside. Fear had already passed through this town before Wade and Nora arrived. "We cannot stay here," Wade said. "Crow's men may still be close." "They are," Amos replied. "They left 2 riders near the bridge. I heard one say Boone was being held at the old toll house until Crow decides what to do with him." Nora straightened. "The toll house between here and Blackthorn." Amos nodded. She knew the place. A stone building beside the narrow bridge over Bear Fork Creek. Years ago, travelers had paid to cross there. Now it stood empty most seasons, used by ranch hands during storms. Wade understood at once. If Boone is there, they may be using it to watch the road. "And Lily?" Nora asked. Amos looked at her carefully. "Crow sent word back to Blackthorn. He knows you have the original proof. He wants you alive, Nora, you and that packet." A cold clarity entered her. "Then we give him what he wants." Wade's eyes narrowed. "No." Nora stepped closer, lowering her voice so Ben would not hear too much fear in it. "Listen before refusing. Crow wants me and the papers. If I ride toward the toll house alone, his men will take me to him or try to. That draws them away from Lily. And puts you in chains again. Only if you fail." His jaw tightened. She touched his sleeve, the same place she had stopped him before he opened the cabin door. This time she did not pull away. "Wade, you told me beside Mint trust. I am asking for that trust now." He looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face, the scar, the pale eye, the fear she refused to obey. "What is the rest of your plan?" he asked. Nora breathed once. "You and Ben get Amos hidden, then circle toward Blackthorn by the cattle wash. If Rosa Medina is still there, she can open the kitchen way. Find Lily. Get her out. I will keep Crow's men busy as long as I can." "And Boone?" "If he is at the toll house, I may be taken there first. I can get word to him, maybe free him if the chance comes." "That is too many maybes." "All we have left are maybes." Wade looked toward the dark mountains, where his burned home lay far behind them. He was silent so long that Nora feared he would forbid her, though he had no right to. At last he took off his coat. Nora's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "The packet is stitched inside. Crow expects it on you or me, so it goes with Ben." Ben looked up sharply. "Me." Wade cut the stitches near the lining and pulled out the oilcloth packet. "You know how to keep quiet." Ben nodded, though he looked terrified. "Good. This packet matters more than all of us if it reaches the right hands. You stay with Amos until I come for you. If I do not come by dawn, you take this to Pastor Hale in Pine Hollow. Not the sheriff, not the judge. Pastor Hale. Tell him to ring the church bell until every soul in town comes out." Ben swallowed. "What then?" "Then you read Mrs. Crow's letter in public." Nora looked at Wade, understanding spreading through her. Sela's Crow's strength lived in closed rooms, private papers, quiet threats, and men afraid to speak first. A church bell would drag the truth into daylight. Amos nodded slowly. "That could work." "It will work," Nora said, "because the boy needed certainty even if none of them had it." Wade wrapped the packet in a strip of cloth, and placed it inside Ben's shirt beneath his coat. Then he took Marshal Boone's badge from Amos and looked at it. "Leave that with me," Amos said. "If I am found, maybe it buys me time." Wade handed it back. Nora saw the hesitation in Wade's eyes when he turned to her. "You do not have to do this," he said. "I know. That is what scares me." Her heart moved painfully. For a moment the street, the danger, and the watching windows faded. She saw only him, a man who had paid $10 to stop her shame, burned the sack from her head, gave her food without price, and lost his cabin because he chose her side. "I was afraid when you took off the sack," she said softly, "not because of my face, because I thought if you looked at me kindly, I might start needing kindness again." Wade's rough face softened. "And did you?" "Yes," Nora whispered, "but not because I am weak, because I am alive." He stepped closer, then stopped, waiting. Nora closed the space herself. The kiss was brief, careful, and full of everything they had no time to say. His hand touched her cheek, not hiding the scar, not avoiding it, just holding her as if every part of her belonged in the light. When they parted, Wade rested his forehead lightly against hers. "Come back to me," he said. Nora's eyes burned. "Get Lily safe and I will. If you believe love is not just a promise but a brave choice in the darkest hour, stay with Nora and Wade now, because the next door they open may change every life in Blackthorn Valley." They separated before fear could make either of them break. Nora took one horse and rode south toward Bear Fork Bridge. Wade, Ben, and Amos vanished into the alleys behind Silver Creek, moving toward the old cattle wash. The road to the toll house was quiet beneath the stars. Nora rode without hiding, letting the horse's hooves strike hard enough to be heard. Her hands were empty. Her coat was buttoned high against the cold. Lily's ribbon was tied around her wrist again, blue against the gray sleeve. Half a mile from the bridge, a rider stepped from the trees. Then another. Then a third. Nora stopped. Harlan Voss rode into the road, his tan coat pale in the moonlight. His face still bore a faint scrape from the snow Wade had dropped on him. "You are either brave," he said, "or tired of running." "Both." "Where is Mercer?" "Gone." "Where are the papers?" "With me." Voss smiled. "I doubt that." "Then search me and disappoint yourself." One of the men laughed. Voss did not. He was too smart to believe easily and too loyal to turn away. "Mr. Crow wants to see you." "I assumed." "And the papers?" "You will have to take me to him for those." His eyes narrowed. "You think yourself clever." "No," Nora said. "I think Silas Crow is afraid." That angered him enough. Voss rode close, reached down and grabbed her reins. "Hands where I can see them." Nora obeyed. The men surrounded her, but she did not lower her head. Not this time. No sack covered her face. No crowd laughed. The moon saw her clearly, scar, pale eye, and all. They took her toward the toll house first. Just as she hoped. The old stone building stood beside the bridge, lantern light leaking from one narrow window. A guard opened the door when Voss knocked twice. Inside, Marshal Elias Boone sat tied to a chair, bruised but awake. His gray eyes lifted when Nora entered. For half a breath, neither spoke. Then Nora looked at the bloodied lawman, the ropes, the armed men, and the bridge beyond the door. And she understood. This was no stop on the way to Blackthorn. It was a trap. Crow had known Wade would never let Nora come alone, unless something more important was moving elsewhere. Voss stepped behind her and took the pistol from his belt. "Mr. Crow sends his compliments," he said. Marshal Boone's face hardened. Nora's heart slammed once. Voss smiled at her. While you are here pretending to be bait, he is already riding back to Blackthorn to greet your mountain man and that sweet little sister of yours." Far across the valley, a faint orange light rose against the dark. Not dawn. Torches. Blackthorn Ranch was waiting. The torches at Blackthorn Ranch glowed like warning stars against the valley dark. Nora Whitaker stood inside the old toll house with Harlan Voss behind her, Marshal Elias Boone tied to a chair before her, and the sound of Bear Fork Creek rushing black and cold beneath the bridge outside. For a moment she could not move. Wade was riding into a trap. Lily was still inside Blackthorn. And Silas Crow had known enough to set his snare around all of them. Voss leaned close enough that Nora smelled tobacco on his coat. "You see it now, don't you? Mr. Crow always thinks 2 roads ahead." Nora turned her head slowly and looked at him. "No," she said, "he thinks fear makes everyone foolish." Voss smiled. "And does it?" "It used to." His smile faded a little. Across the room, Marshal Boone shifted in the chair. His wrists were tied behind him, his cheek bruised, but his eyes were sharp. He looked from Nora to Voss, then toward the window where 2 guards stood watching the bridge. Nora understood the look. He was counting. So was she. Voss had 3 men inside the toll house, 1 at the window, 1 near the stove, 1 by the door. Voss himself stood too close behind her, confident because her hands were empty and her body was tired. He still believed. He was looking at the woman from the wagon platform. He did not understand that the sack had burned. Nora lowered her eyes, letting her shoulders sink. "Please," she whispered. Voss chuckled. "There she is. I knew we would find sense in you eventually. I want to speak to Marshal Boone." "What for?" "So he can tell Wade I tried." The guard by the stove snorted. Pretty speech for a woman with no chance. Nora let her chin tremble. She hated the performance, but she knew men like Voss loved weakness when they thought they had caused it. Voss considered her, then shrugged. "Fine. Say your goodbyes to the lawman. He will not be much use after tonight anyway." He shoved her forward. Nora stumbled just enough to seem broken and fell against Boone's chair. Her hands gripped the back of it for balance. The marshal's eyes met hers. She whispered so low only he could hear, "Can you stand if cut loose?" His answer was only a blink. "Yes." Nora's fingers moved beneath the edge of her sleeve. Anne's silver button, tied there by thread, had a sharp broken rim where age had worn one side thin. She had kept it near Lily's ribbon, a small token of love from a woman she never met. Now that small silver edge became a blade. She pressed it against the rope around Boone's wrist and began to saw. Voss paced behind them. "Touching, real touching. Maybe when Mr. Crow is done with Mercer, he'll let you weep over both graves." Nora's hand froze for half a second. Boone's fingers brushed hers once. "Keep going." The rope fibers loosened slowly. Too slowly. Outside, a horse neighed. One of the guards turned his head. "What was that?" he asked. "Wind," Voss snapped. Then another sound came. A low church bell from far across the valley. One deep note. Then another. Then another. Nora's heart leapt. Pine Hollow. Ben had made it. Voss stiffened. "What is that?" The guard by the door opened it and stepped outside. Cold air rushed in. The bell kept ringing, rolling over the dark land again and again, louder with every strike, as if the whole valley were being called to judgment. Nora saw Voss's uncertainty. Crow had planned for riders, roads, hidden papers, and frightened witnesses. He had not planned for a church bell waking every soul in Pine Hollow. At that same moment, the rope around Marshal Boone's wrist snapped. Boone moved fast for an injured man. He surged up, driving his shoulder into the guard by the stove. Nora snatched the man's dropped pistol and pointed it at Voss with both hands. "Do not move." Voss stared at her, shocked less by the gun than by her steady voice. Marshal Boone grabbed the second guard and slammed him against the wall. The man by the door spun back inside, but froze when Boone took the fallen rifle and leveled it at his chest. "Hands up," Boone ordered. The authority in his voice filled the toll house like thunder. For the first time that night, Harlan Voss looked afraid. Nora kept the pistol on him. "Crow is waiting for Wade at Blackthorn." Boone nodded, breathing hard. "Then we ride." Voss laughed bitterly. "Too late. Crow will have Mercer by now." Nora stepped closer. "You better hope not." Within minutes, Boone had the three men bound with their own ropes. He retrieved his coat, his hat, and a spare gun hidden beneath a loose floor stone. Nora stared at him. Boone gave her a dry look. "Never let captors search you in a hurry." Despite everything, Nora almost smiled. They took 2 horses from the toll house and rode hard toward Blackthorn Ranch. The church bell still rang in the distance. From the road, they could see lanterns moving in Pine Hollow. People were waking. Doors were opening. Men and women who had stayed silent too long were stepping into the street. Nora prayed Ben had found Pastor Hale. She prayed Amos was still alive. Most of all, she prayed Wade had not trusted darkness too much. Blackthorn Ranch came into view below them. The whole front yard burned with torchlight. Men stood near the porch. Horses shifted in nervous lines. And at the center of the yard, with his hands bound but his head held high, stood Wade Mercer. Nora stopped breathing. Beside him was Rosa Medina, the cook, held by one ranch hand. Near the porch, Lily stood in a pale dress with a shawl around her shoulders, trembling but alive. Silas Crow stood on the porch steps in his black coat. Even from the ridge, Nora could see his satisfaction. Boone raised a hand, stopping her before she rushed forward. "Not yet. He has Wade. And we have the law if we use it right." Nora looked toward Pine Hollow. The bell still rang. Then along the main road, lights appeared. Lanterns. Dozens of them. People were coming from town. Crow saw them too. His face turned toward the approaching glow. Nora and Boone rode down from the ridge as the first townspeople reached Blackthorn's gate. Pastor Hale came in front on an old gray mare, his Bible tucked under one arm and an oilcloth packet in the other. Ben Reed rode beside him, pale but proud. Behind them came Amos, tied awkwardly to his saddle to stay upright, with half of Pine Hollow following. The blacksmith had survived, and the town had finally stopped watching from windows. Crow's voice rang across the yard. "This is private property. Leave at once." Pastor Hale did not stop, not while a girl's freedom is being hidden behind lies. Crow's eyes narrowed, and he saw Nora riding beside Marshal Boone. For the first time since she had known him, Silas Crow looked truly shaken. "You," he said. Nora dismounted slowly. Wade's eyes found hers across the torchlit yard. Relief crossed his face, but he did not speak. A ranch hand held a pistol near his ribs. Nora saw the threat and forced herself not to run to him. Marshal Boone stepped forward. "Silas Crow, I am placing this property under federal inquiry." Crow laughed, but it came thin. "On what charge?" "Fraud, unlawful restraint, assault on an officer, interference with federal investigation." Boone looked toward the crowd. "And any other charge the testimony supports once these people find their tongues." Murmurs moved through the townspeople. Crow lifted his chin. "You have no proof." Pastor Hale raised the oilcloth packet. "Mrs. Crow's own letter," the pastor said. "A paid debt certificate for Lily Whitaker, copies of altered deeds, receipts and names of dead men, and a signed statement from Amos Reed describing your men's attack. Crow's face hardened. That boy stole private papers. Nora stepped into the torchlight. No, she said. Your wife saved a girl and you buried the truth. Lily looked at her with wide, wet eyes. Nora, she whispered. The sound of her sister's voice nearly brought Nora to her knees. But she stayed upright. This is your proof, Lily, Nora said gently, holding out the certificate Boone had given back to her. You owe him nothing. You never did. Lily shook her head, confused and crying. He said Father's debt was mine. He lied. Crow snapped. She does not understand legal matters. Rosa broke free from the hand holding her and stepped forward. She understands enough. We all did. We were only afraid. The yard fell silent. Then another voice spoke from the crowd. A widow named Mrs. Avery, who had lost water rights to Crow 2 years before, raised her lantern. He changed my deed after my husband died. A miner stepped forward. He sold me land already promised to the railroad. A ranch hand near the barn lowered his gun. He kept wages from us for months. One by one, voices rose. Not shouting, not revenge. Truth. The thing Crow feared most. The men holding Wade and Lily began looking at one another. Power built on fear weakens fast when witnesses gather. Marshal Boone raised his rifle. Release them. For a moment, no one moved. Then the ranch hand beside Wade stepped away. Wade's hands were still tied, but he walked toward Nora with steady steps. She reached him and cut the rope with Boone's knife. Her fingers shook so badly she nearly dropped it. You came back, Wade said quietly. So did you. I had to. Your sister was inside. Her eyes filled. He touched her cheek with his bound-free hand, his thumb resting just below her scar. And you? I was at the toll house. I know. You knew. His mouth softened. I trusted you. Those 3 words reached deeper than any vow could have. Before she could answer, Lily ran across the yard. Nora! Nora turned just in time to catch her sister. Lily collapsed into her arms, sobbing hard against her shoulder. Nora held her so tightly she feared she might hurt her, but Lily only clung tighter. I thought you left me, Lily cried. Never, Nora whispered. I was always coming back. Behind them, Boone ordered Crow taken into custody. The rich rancher protested, threatened, named judges and friends and men with titles. But fewer people listened now. His words sounded smaller beneath the church bell still ringing faintly from town. As Boone's deputies tied Silas Crow's hands, he looked at Nora with hatred burning in his eyes. You think this makes you clean, he hissed. They will always remember what you were. Nora looked at him. For years she had feared that sentence, feared the whispers, the scar, the pale eye, the story others told before she entered a room. Now Lily's arms were around her. Wade stood at her side. The townspeople watched not with laughter but with shame and respect. Nora lifted her chin. Let them remember, she said, but this time they will remember the truth. Crow was led away under torchlight. And as the first gray hint of morning touched the mountains, Nora Whitaker stood in the yard of Blackthorn Ranch with Lily safe in her arms, Wade beside her, and a whole town finally awake around them. The sack was gone. The silence was gone. But the hardest truth still waited. Because when the sun rose fully over Blackthorn Valley, Nora would have to decide whether she could build a life with the mountain man who had lost everything for her, or whether loving him meant giving him back the peace she had burned from his world. Morning rose over Blackthorn Ranch like a mercy no one had earned, but everyone needed. The first sunlight touched the high roof of Silas Crow's house, then the cottonwoods by the creek, then the torches burning low in the yard. Smoke curled from their blackened tops. Horses stamped and snorted in the cold. Townspeople stood in small groups, wrapped in shawls and coats, whispering as if loud voices might wake the cruelty they had all helped bury with silence. Nora Whitaker stood in the center of it, all with Lily pressed against her side. Her sister felt real in her arms, thin, trembling, warm, alive. For years, Nora had dreamed of this moment. She had imagined finding Lily, pulling her away from Blackthorn, and running until Crow's house disappeared behind them. But she had never imagined standing there in front of half the valley, with the truth spoken aloud, Sela's Crow bound under Marshal Boone's authority, and Wade Mercer beside her with a split lip, bruised cheek, and eyes full of quiet relief. He had lost his cabin. He had nearly lost his life. Still, when Nora looked at him, he gave her the smallest nod as if to say, "Keep standing. I am here." Marshal Elias Boone stood on the porch steps with Crow's account books in one hand and Mrs. Crow's letter in the other. Pastor Hale, Amos Reed, Rosa Medina, and 3 frightened ranch hands had all given statements before the sun fully cleared the hills. One by one, the locked doors inside Blackthorn had opened. Women who worked in the laundry house stepped out. Men who had been afraid of losing wages began speaking. A widow from town showed a deed Crow had altered. A miner produced a receipt that matched one in Crow's private book. Truth did not arrive like thunder. It arrived like lanterns, one light after another, until the darkness had nowhere left to hide. Crow stood near the bottom step with his hands tied before him. His black coat was dusty now, his hair loose, his face pale with fury. He no longer looked like a king of the valley. He looked like a man who had mistaken fear for loyalty and found out too late that fear runs away when truth walks in. "You will regret this," he told Marshal Boone. "You have no idea who I know." Boone looked at him calmly. "I know enough. I know you held a free young woman under false debt. I know you attacked a federal officer. I know you burned a man's home and tried to bury evidence of fraud." Crow's eyes darted to Nora. "She is lying." Nora stepped forward before anyone else could answer. Lily's fingers tightened around her hand, but Nora gently squeezed back and kept moving. For so long, Crow's voice had filled rooms while hers had been forced into corners. Not this morning, not anymore. "You lied when you said my father's debt still held Lily," Nora said. "Your wife paid it before she died. You hid the paper." Crow's mouth twisted. "My wife was weak." "She was kind," Rosa said from the porch. The words were soft, but they carried. Crow turned on her. "You were a servant." Rosa lifted her chin. "And I saw more from the kitchen door than you ever feared." Murmurs moved through the crowd. Boone raised his hand. "Sela's Crow, you will answer before a federal court in Denver. Until then, you are in my custody." 2 deputies who had ridden in with Boone after the first alarm stepped forward. They took Crow by the arms. He fought only with words now. Threats, names, promises of ruin. But the crowd did not step back. As he passed Nora, he leaned close enough for only her to hear. "They will always see the scar first." For a heartbeat, the old fear stirred. Then Wade was beside her. He did not speak for her. He did not move in front of her. He simply stood there, steady as the mountain, letting her answer for herself. Nora looked straight at Crow. "Then let them see it," she said. "It proves I survived you." Crow's face changed. Not with remorse. Men like him rarely gave that gift. But with defeat. The deputies led him away. No one cheered. It did not feel like a moment for cheering. It felt like a hard door closing after too many years left open. Lily began to cry then. Not loudly, just a quiet breaking. Her face turned into Nora's shoulder. Nora held her, stroking the soft hair she had not touched in so long. "You came back," Lily whispered. "I told you I would. They said you forgot me." I carried you every day." Lily pulled back, eyes red. "I believed them sometimes." Nora's heart cracked, but she did not hide from it. "I know," she said. "That is what fear does. It makes lies sound like shelter." Lily looked toward Wade and him. Nora followed her gaze. Wade stood a few steps away, giving them room. His coat was torn. Soot darkened one sleeve from the burned cabin. Anne's silver button was still tied at Nora's cuff, catching the morning light. "He is the man who opened the door," Nora said. Wade lowered his eyes, embarrassed by praise. Lily studied him, with the caution of someone learning safety one breath at a time. "Thank you," she said. Wade's voice was gentle. "You are family now if you want to be." Lily looked at Nora. Nora nodded. The girl's mouth trembled into the first real smile Nora had seen from her in years. By noon, Blackthorn Ranch had changed hands in spirit, even before any court papers said so. Boone sealed the office and ledger room. Men who had followed Crow for wages were told to stay and give statements or leave peacefully. Rosa gathered the women from the kitchen and laundry into the dining room, where Pastor Hale's wife and several townswomen brought food, blankets, and warm coffee. Nora watched Lily eat slowly, as if every bite needed permission. Wade noticed too. He sat across from her and quietly pushed the butter dish closer. Lily stared at it. Then she looked at Nora. "You may," Nora said softly. Lily took a small scrape of butter for her bread. Such a tiny thing, such a terrible proof of how long she had lived under another person's permission. Wade looked away toward the window, his jaw tight. Nora reached under the table and touched his hand. He turned his palm up. Their fingers met, hidden from the room but not from each other. Later, when the business of the law was done for the day, Boone came to them near the front gate. "Crow's crimes will take time to untangle," he said, "but Lily's freedom is clear. Mrs. Crow's certificate settles that. Nora, your debt papers are void if we prove the same fraud touched them, and I believe we can." "What about Wade's cabin?" Lily asked before Nora could. Boone looked at Wade. "Burning a home is no small charge. Crow will answer for it." Wade looked toward the mountains, where Timberline Ridge stood hidden beyond miles of snow and pine. "A charge does not rebuild logs," he said. "No," Boone replied, "but justice may provide the means." Amos Reed came limping up beside them, one arm in a sling, Ben hovering like a worried shadow. "There is another thing," Amos said. "Folks from Pine Hollow have been talking." "That is usually trouble," Wade said. "Not this time." Amos's rough face softened. "We watched when we should have stood. Some of us aim to make that right. Come spring, we'll help raise you a new cabin, bigger this time." Wade opened his mouth, but no words came. Ben grinned, "With 2 rooms at least." "3," Lily said, surprising them all. Everyone looked at her. Her cheeks pinked, but she did not lower her head. "If I am family, I would like a room with a window." Nora laughed through sudden tears. Wade looked at Lily, then at Nora. "3 rooms it is," he said. The weeks that followed were not easy, but they were honest. Nora and Lily did not heal in one day because the truth had been spoken. Some nights Lily woke crying. Some mornings Nora reached for her wrist, afraid the ribbon was gone. Wade sometimes stood alone at the edge of the burned place where his cabin had been, grieving not only timber and stone, but the last shelter that had held Anne's memory. Nora never rushed him from that grief. One afternoon, she found him there with his hat in his hands, staring at the charred hearthstones. "I am sorry," she said. He looked over. "We have had this talk." "I know I am still sorry." The wind moved through the blackened pines. Wade crouched and picked up something from the ash, the chipped blue cup, cracked, smoke-stained but not broken through. Nora smiled faintly. Your strong coffee survived. He turned the cup in his hand. And gave me this the first winter we were married. Nora's smile faded. She would want it used, Wade said, not buried with ashes. Nora stepped closer. Are you sure? No, he admitted, but I am learning that love does not disappear because another love walks in. The words settled over her gently. She touched Anne's silver button at her cuff. I never wanted to take her place. You did not. He looked at her then fully. You made a new one. When spring came, Pine Hollow climbed the mountain. Men hauled logs. Women brought food. Children carried nails in tin cups and made more noise than help. Amos worked one-handed and cursed anyone who told him to rest. Ben followed Wade everywhere, asking about traps, horses, and rifle care until Wade finally gave him a hammer and told him talking counted as half work only if the other half got done. Lily chose the window for her room. It faced east, where morning light touched the ridge first. Rosa visited from the valley often, bringing seeds, recipes, and news from the families Crow had wronged. Some land was being returned. Some debts were being struck down. Not everything could be fixed, but enough had begun that hope no longer felt foolish. By early summer, the new cabin stood strong beneath the pines. 3 rooms, a wide hearth, a porch facing the valley, a peg by the door where Anne's shawl hung beside Nora's gray coat and Lily's blue one. The chipped cup sat on the shelf, filled with wildflowers instead of coffee. On the evening the cabin was finished, Pastor Hale came up from Pine Hollow. So did Boone, Amos, Ben, Rosa, and half the town. Nora thought it was only a house blessing. Then she saw Wade standing near the porch in a clean shirt, his hair combed back, looking more nervous than he had looked facing Crow's men. Lily appeared beside Nora, carrying a simple cream dress. What is this? Nora asked. Lily smiled. A beginning. Nora's breath caught. She looked toward Wade. He stepped forward, holding something small in his palm. Not a store ring, not gold. A silver band made by Amos Reed from an old spoon handle, polished until it shone soft in the lantern light. We have stood together through fear, fire, and truth, Wade said. His voice was rough, but it did not break. But I never properly asked you. Nora Whitaker, will you be my wife because you choose me, not because papers or danger or any man's cruelty pushed you to it? The yard went silent. Nora looked at Lily. Her sister was crying but smiling too. Nora looked at the town, at the people who had once watched her shame and now stood as witnesses to her choice. Then she looked at Wade, the mountain man who had not flinched at her face, the widower who had made room for new love without betraying old love, the man who had stood beside her, never above her. Yes, Nora said, not because I was saved, because I am free. Wade's eyes shone. Pastor Hale married them beneath the new porch beam while lanterns swung in the soft summer wind. When Wade slipped the silver ring onto Nora's finger, Lily tied the faded blue ribbon around Nora's bouquet of wildflowers. Anne's silver button was sewn at Nora's cuff, small and shining, a quiet blessing from the past. The kiss was gentle. The cheer that followed rolled down the ridge like music. That night there was dancing in the yard. Amos played a fiddle badly and loudly. Ben tried to dance with Lily and stepped on her hem twice. Rosa laughed until she wiped her eyes. Marshal Boone stood near the porch with coffee, pretending not to smile. Wade and Nora danced last. The stars came out over Colorado, bright and endless. The new cabin glowed behind them, warm with lamplight. Nora rested her head against Wade's chest and listened to his heart. Do you ever think about that day in Pine Hollow? She asked. Every day. I thought my life was over. Wade held her closer. So did I before you came. She looked up at him. What did you see when the sack came off? He touched her cheek softly, his thumb near the scar. "I saw a woman who had been forced to hide," he said, "and I wondered who had been foolish enough to fear that much courage." Nora closed her eyes. For once, no shame came. Only peace. If this story reminded you that love can begin with one act of kindness, let your heart stay soft for the next lonely soul who crosses your path. Subscribe for more romantic Wild West stories where courage, healing, and love meet on the frontier. Years later, people in Pine Hollow still told the story of the mountain man who paid $10 for a rejected bride with a sack over her head. But Nora never told it that way. When children asked, she would sit on the porch of the 3-room cabin, Wade beside her, Lily laughing somewhere in the garden, and say the truth. "A man did not buy me," she would tell them. "He opened a door. I was the one who walked through." And above them, the Colorado mountains stood tall and quiet, guarding a home built from ashes, truth, and a love that no fear could ever cover again.